are you kind of like, I guess, two former Bet the Process guests, Corey Jez meets Scott Fawcett without the
No, but he has like he's like
no.
Corey Jez meets Scott Fawcett with some love of Gil Hands, right? We got to have like
Yeah.
the course architecture part in there, right?
I think there would be a lot of overlap between. I know that Scott and I view things very differently, and there's certain topics where we have a completely different point
Well,
of
then you're
view.
wrong, right? Sorry.
Wait, I would well, why don't we dive into that? I'm kind of curious where you all differ.
I think especially with a topic like the rollback, and I don't know if if we'll get into that, but like I know he's very anti rollback. I'm very pro rollback, so like that would be one one big example. But in terms
To
of
explain what the rollback is to everyone that may not know.
uh big topic in the golf world, certainly one I'm pretty passionate about. But there's whether or not the golf ball goes too far, and there are different angles you could take to that of whether it's an issue of the golf ball itself or if driver heads have become too forgiving. Should there be some regulation to shrink the distances that either professional golfers hit the ball or that everybody hits the ball, including amateurs? So there's a lot of debate about that in the golf world. And then data gets brought in of is there actually a distance problem? And I think I have a pretty fundamentally different view than some of those other people, not just Scott. I mean, there's a lot of people who look at data and conclude that there's not a problem. Brandel Chambly would be another person that I vehemently disagree with his takes on a lot of things, including golf course setup and rollback. So that would be a big example. But in terms of on course decisions, even if Scott and I might come at it from slightly different angles, to use a term that's also contentious in the golf world, angles, I think we would end up landing on the same decisions for how you would attack the vast majority of golf holes.
So I guess we'll keep going with the rollback talk a little bit. So why do you think it's such a big problem? I mean, and what do you say to people that say the correlation between driving distance and strokes gained, it has not really changed much over the years?
To me, that is a separate issue. And the reason that a rollback is important has nothing to do with the relative advantage of distance over time. Well aware that distance has always been an advantage, and the longest hitters 30 years ago were also the best players in the world. Like, to me, that's not the problem. There are multiple reasons that distance is an issue. For one, designs, the way that golfers play golf courses now are out of scale with the way that they were designed. And obvious examples are like taking fairway bunkers out of play, right? There's a bunker at 310, and that was built to discourage players from, or it was built as a test for the longest players in the world. But once you surpass that 310 or 315 threshold, now you're hitting over the bunkers that were supposed to be designed as a defense. I think that's a problem, but to be honest, like they're much bigger issues. And one thing I talk about a lot is the importance of wide misses finding a penalty. And with fans needing to be on a golf course and infrastructure and concession stands, like it is very difficult to have enough space to both accommodate fans and to host a modern championship and penalize wide misses in a way that players get bailed out frequently. So a great example, probably my favorite example to use, is the fourth hole at Torrey Pines South. People could pull this up on Google Earth. But to me, like that is the intersection of understanding strategy and some of the constraints we've placed upon the game. That's a 25-yard wide fairway where there's a hazard down the left. So the optimal tee shot there is going to be down the right side of that fairway and bring a lot of that fairway bunker into play at Torrey Pines. The problem I have is that you can smash driver and miss even right of that fairway bunker. And you're often going to be in an area where fans are standing, have trampled down the rough, and you can really get away with wide misses, not just on 4 at Torrey, but a lot of holes at Torrey Pines. And we focus so much on how narrow a fairway is, and not nearly enough on what happens when you get way off a fairway. And golf courses, especially that were built a long time ago, but even golf courses that were built recently, they aren't built to where you can if you hit a 325-yard shot offline, you're often going to get bailed out. And I think that's an underrated part of what rollback would address, is that if golfers were hitting it shorter, it would be a more skillful game. And then there's also just the driver head, which has gotten ridiculously forgiving. You can hit it anywhere on the face. that is descaling the game. And that might be okay for amateurs. You could convince me that that's what's in the best interest of the sport for amateurs. It is certainly not what's in the best interest for the professional sport.
You know, you bring up a really good point thinking about the dispersion patterns and the big misses versus just misses, because a lot of people harp on rough length and they say, oh, if you make the rough more penal, it's going to neuter distance a little bit or take away that advantage. And, you know, we saw what happened at Winged Foot where it was just bomb and gouge. There's sort of what is that sort of sweet spot of like, you know, because if nobody can hit the fairway, then driving accuracy doesn't matter at all, right? That course was the fairways were super firm. It was really tough to hold the fairways. What is that sort of sweet spot for what percentage of fairways hit that sort of would minimize the impact of driving distance, or I guess maximize the impact of like driving skill in a way that keeps the game in balance?
Yeah, I think I look at it just slightly differently in that there's not like an optimal width of a fairway. It's about like what's a little bit off the fairway and how long is that grass, and then what happens when you get way off the fairway. So just as an example, like TPC San Antonio is a great accuracy test. Those fairways are narrow. They're like 25 yards or so. But when you get a little bit off those fairways, there's still some short rough that it can run through. So I just think viewing it a little bit more, not strictly the width of a fairway, but like what the effective width of different playing areas, right? So you get a little bit off at TPC San Antonio, you have that short rough, and then you get way off and you have desert areas. So I think generally a pretty good rule of thumb, like 30 to 32, 33 yard wide fairways, generally wide enough that you can hit them. But like Muirfield Village is a great example where the dimensions are about 30, 32 yards on a lot of those fairways. And if you get way off, you're in thick rough. I don't know how much you want to go into the design of Muirfield Village, but like there's a lot. What the tactic used there by Jack Nicklaus is a lot of those greens have hazards in front of them. So if you get off and you're in thick rough, it almost forces you to lay up because you're either bringing the risk of coming up short and coming up in the water, or you have to kind of send it over the back of the green and it's a very difficult up and down. So to sort of indirectly answer your question, it depends on the entirety of the design. Like you could show me a really good accuracy test that has 20 yard wide fairways, but you know, maybe from 20 to 30 yards, there's a little bit of a penalty based on the design. And then if you get way off, there's an even bigger penalty. Like I don't think there's a magic number when it comes to the effective width of the fairway. It just depends on the totality of the design. And Muirfield Village and TPC San Antonio look completely different, but they're both very good accuracy tests.
Bet the process.